Say, you want to...
Watch Miraculous World London?
Well, all right. Let's go. Oh, I almost forgot.
There's no
London.
Hello everyone and welcome back to a critical retrospective. And before you ask, yes, my intro music is different this time because it's October and you know, it's the spooky month and all that. I know a certain someone who's probably really excited about this, but you know what, all of that is besides the point because for the first time in almost an entire year, we got some fresh Miraculous content and it's another Miraculous World special. And those are almost always incredibly good. Out of everything in the entire show, I feel like these specials are some of the most positively received by the fanbase. And so now is the real question. Does Miraculous World London at the edge of time actually manage to continue the streak? Well, the answer is yes. And no. Okay, cards on the table here. I'm going to be incredibly honest right now. I am heavily conflicted with this special in all honesty. It does a lot right and manages to push forward the story in some very unique and interesting ways. And yet there are still some caveats here and there that frustrate me to no end. And it's almost making me a bit impatient for season 6. Not only because I want to see the good things expanded upon, but because I also really desperately want to see if the bad stuff is improved upon. And if it isn't, then that might just be the final nail in the coffin for this show. In my opinion, this special leaves the franchise in a bit of a shaky place. I mean, things could go either way now, and if they go the wrong way, then I'm going to be very disappointed. However, I do have hope. So, let's talk about that, shall we? Okay, before I start complaining, I want to give this special the credit it deserves, because honestly, it does actually manage to solve quite a few of the problems I had with Season 5's finale, and it's honestly quite amazing that it does that. Genuinely, Season 5's finale was so terrible I thought there was no hope left. Everything was either bad or just vague and nebulous. The idea to sideline Adrian was a terrible one, and yet they just did it regardless of what we'd think. And at the time, the idea that Adrian should never find out that Gabriel was in fact Monarch seemed awful. I mean, come on, Astruck, that's just the definition of an anticlimax. Or at the very least, that's what I thought at first. I didn't think that they could do anything remotely intriguing with this premise, and yet I was played for a fool. And this is very cleverly showcased in the first quarter of this episode. This part is almost entirely revolved around Marinette's guilt over lying to not only Adrian but the entirety of Paris. She told everyone after the battle with Monarch that they never actually managed to find out who he was. Something that we, the audience, know is a big fat lie, and have known for a year and a half, but they finally clarify a few things that were just so unclear before. Ladybug feels incredibly guilty over all of this. I mean, in some of the parts of this special, she looked like she was losing sleep from all of it. And to be honest, I definitely understand. When you do something wrong, your conscience eats away at you until there's nothing left. It becomes the only thing you can think about until there's literally no other way you can possibly absolve yourself of this. Digging deeper into your depression is the only way to escape. Personally, I love stories like this, where the hero, or at the very least the protagonist, realizes that things they've done in their past are completely and utterly wrong and want to make things right. Like a redemption arc of sorts. Think Zuko from Avatar The Last Airbender or Viren from The Dragon Prince. Okay, this is a completely random tangent, but I'm begging you, please watch The Dragon Prince. It's one of the best animated shows I have ever watched, and it's all on Netflix right now. I mean, how can you say no to voice acting like this?
You have to stay! No!
Anyway, the point I'm trying to make is, I love the idea of Marinette actually wrestling with her inner demons like she did in Season 4. Except this time, instead of doubts about her role as Guardian, it's doubts about her morality. For the longest time, Adrian has been denied agency in his own life. Gabriel just keeps him on a leash 24/7, preventing him from truly flying and coming into his own. And yet, Marinette was his symbol of freedom. Marinette showed Adrian that he could be way more than just his father's puppet on strings. They could be happy together, and most importantly, they could trust one another. But Marinette has put a compromise on that relationship now. She is being dishonest with him. She has fabricated a lie that puts Gabriel in a good light when he doesn't really deserve it. However, this is the point where I kind of diverge. A few days ago, I asked my community if they felt bad for Marinette after the London special, and most people said that they didn't. I definitely understand where they're coming from though. However, in my opinion, I think the situation is a lot more nuanced announced. Gabriel literally said, "Make sure Adrian never remembers me for the villain I was." And so Marinette, panicked, was kind of coerced into all of this. And also, she really loves Adrian and she wouldn't do anything to hurt him. She thought that this was the best move, the only way to keep the peace between all parties, and to prevent Adrian's mind from collapsing in on itself. The difference between Marinette and Lila is pretty stark, honestly. Lila lies for attention and for her own selfish gain and doesn't care who she hurts in the pursuit of her goals. Marinette lies in a misguided attempt to make things better for everyone. And unlike Lila, we can see just how guilty Marinette feels about everything. She's become obsessed with trying to figure out the reasons behind her actions and the consequences for them, constantly seeking reassurance that what she did was right. And yet, she never gets a straight answer. Everyone always tells her that she did what she thought was right, and I guess that she'll see in the future what happens. It's a piece of moral ambiguity that we don't often get in Miraculous, and I really appreciate it. And it makes recreation slightly easier to swallow, because it means the end of Season 5 isn't some annoying utopia where everybody got off scot-free regardless of what they did. And frankly, some rather crummy people got away with their crimes at the end of Season 5, so it's nice that the London special addressed this, but I feel like I'll leave more for this plot point for the next section of this review. Let's move on to some more good things that I liked from this special. Something very surprising. The weird relationship that came about between Natalie and Marinette. And I'm gonna be perfectly honest, I was not expecting this. I mean, these two characters haven't had that much screen time together, and the few moments they did share have been incredibly detached. And now Natalie is being shown to be kind of a surrogate mother figure for Marinette, being very kind and affectionate. And if I'm being perfectly honest, I really like this idea. Someone who Marinette can confide in for her deepest, darkest secrets. And when Natalie gave Marinette a hug to comfort her after everything that's happened, it got me. If there's one thing that this special nails above all else, it's the emotion. They really nail the idea that literally everyone in this special is struggling so hard with something, whether it be from guilt, sadness, or anger. Okay, it's finally time to gush about my absolute favorite part of this special, Lila. I mean, Lila has always been one of the worst written characters in the entire show, so look at this improvement. It's genuinely astounding how much better she is, and it's because they stopped focusing on all the stupid lies and plot armor and actually honed in on her absolute creepiness. I mean, I don't think we give enough credit to the fact that Lila is really scary, especially in this special. She is eerily competent. I mean, this is her first time with the Butterfly Miraculous, and yet she already gets the wish. It takes absolute crazy levels of plot armor and time travel shenanigans to stop her, and boy, it's exciting to watch. I really enjoyed watching Ladybug having to try and outsmart this new villain, especially considering the fact that she had absolutely no idea who this was. I mean, she thinks that she sorted out Lila back in Confrontation, that Lila was just a quick domestic threat that they don't really need to worry about anymore because she won't be an inconvenience any longer. How untrue that ended up being in the best way possible. Gabriel's tenure as the big bad of the series was laced with crazy sympathetic moments that wanted you to actually understand where he was coming from. They tried to humanize this guy as a grieving father who wanted what was best for his family, driven to madness from his unwillingness to ever give up, not realizing, or rather not caring about the damage he was causing to everyone around him. Lila, on the other hand, doesn't really have that kind of stuff. In fact, she doesn't really have anything, and that's what's so scary. The only thing that has gotten her to this point was pure spite and hatred, this absolute insistence that she must triumph over her enemies and make them pay in the most harsh ways possible. She's literally a psychopath, and yet what makes this even more terrifying is that we have no idea why she's doing this. We're told that Lila's mysterious new wish will reshape the timeline in a way no one's ever seen before, but what does that mean? Good glory, what does that mean? Tell me, Astra! I really appreciate the fact that they're not playing their hand with Lila too early like they did with Gabriel. I really hope they continue this idea that she's a very mysterious new threat, and I also really want her to continue being this intelligent going into Season 6 and beyond. I mean, I've watched the show for 7 years. I know that the Miraculous World specials are fairly inconsistent with the rest of the show in terms of its writing. It feels like they saved the best stuff for these specials, so I really hope that's not the case here. I'm begging you guys, please let Season 6 be on par with the specials in terms of its quality. So yeah, as you can probably tell, I've been very positive thus far. And that's because this special does so much right and makes me so much more excited for Season 6 than I was before. However, it would be unfair of me to ignore the problems that I have with this special. Because while it does improve upon the Season 5 finale in some areas, it also makes other parts worse and even has its own little issues self-contained here. So let's explore that, shall we? Okay, here it goes. It's time for my criticism to start rolling in. This is the other side of the coin, as it were. The yin to the yang. The crystallized Harumi to the Oni trilogy Harumi. I think you get the idea. The point of the matter is, there was a few things in this special that left me scratching my head. I was wondering, was this really the best decision, guys? So I guess I should stop beating around the bush and tell you what I mean. I feel like the thing most people are going to take away from this special was the scene with Adrian, where Bug Noir tells him that Gabriel was a hero and sacrificed his life to defeat Monarch. And yeah, I am mixed on this scene. You've already heard me talk about what I like about it, but here's what I don't like about it very much. While the story is kind of interesting in the fact that it forces Marinette to confront her own morals, it does so at the expense of the other main character of the franchise, Adrian, and denies him and the audience the catharsis of seeing Gabriel get what's coming to him. I mean, especially towards the tail end of Season 5, Gabriel was just the worst father in the history of fathers, putting Adrian through unspeakable psychological torment just because he thought he was doing what was right, or rather was that just a thinly veiled excuse. Everything was riding on the Season 5 finale. Everything was riding on Adrian confronting his father's abuse, standing up for himself and becoming his own person free from these chains. I mean, heck, in Season 2, Cat Noir was lamenting over the fact that he was always left in the dark. Plus, one of Season 4's main overarching stories was that Cat Noir was starting to feel left out, something that I surprisingly neglected to mention in my Season 4 retrospective. This fact keeps me awake at night. So many of the fans, including myself, wanted Cat Noir to have a more significant role to play, to prove to everyone why the show is called Miraculous, Tales of Ladybug and Cat Noir. And yet, by lying to Adrian and having everybody in his life go along with this lie, we don't get that. He's treated like this plot device, this kitten that Marinette needs to protect. He's like an ornament on Marinette's shelf or something. And yes, while I understand why she did this, wanting to protect Adrian from the truth because she thinks it'll hurt him too much, which incidentally does prove the fact that she loves him for the real him, which is a real point of contention before, it doesn't change the fact that there's something thoroughly icky about this whole situation, don't you think? I mean, let's take a step back from the emotions of it all and look at this as objectively as we can. Marinette tells Adrian that his abusive father was actually a hero and absolves him of all wrongdoing. She tells all of Paris that Gabriel was a hero and deserves to be applauded and celebrated for this. She approves of the statue propping him up as some kind of heroic paragon of virtue, and Adrian has to live the rest of his life thinking that his father wasn't so bad after all, indirectly justifying his mistreatment of him. Now, whenever Adrian thinks about how badly he was treated by Gabriel, he's gonna think, well, at least he sacrificed himself for all of us at the end. Everything he did to protect me. It was all for my own good. He really did love me after all. I'm not the only one who finds this just a teensy-weensy bit disconcerting, right? While I do understand where Marinette was coming from, I genuinely feel like telling him the truth would have been a lesser blow. It would have been easier for Adrian, in my opinion, to reconcile the fact that Gabriel was a monster considering how he was actually treated by him all these seasons. I mean, it's not really that much of a logical leap, is it? Adrian could just conclude that since his father was terrible to him for months, then surely he was a supervillain terrorizing Paris. All lying to Adrian about Gabriel's true morality is going to do is make Adrian desperately want Gabriel back in his life. Not letting Gabriel actually face the consequences of his evil actions posthumously is going to make Adrian feel like he's been deprived of a gentle, loving father. Adrian is mourning the loss of someone who doesn't exist. And when the beans are inevitably and thoroughly spilled, Adrian is just gonna have to do the grieving song and dance all over again. Except this time it's going to be exacerbated by the realization that everyone he trusted was lying to him. And he's been denied the agency even now. It's quite frustrating to say the least. And I don't know how much longer they're going to keep up this lie, how long in season 6 this is going to be the main plot point, but it's going to feel icky no matter what they do or for how long they do it. I mean, if they treated Adrian as an actual important character in season 4 and 5, then maybe this would be easier to swallow, but as it stands, this isn't where we are. Adrian has felt like he was being neglected in favor of other lesser characters for 3 years at this point, and so no matter what you do or how interesting you try to make this new storyline, it's going to feel stupid, because we've seen this before plenty of times, and that means we're not really going to be as receptive to it as we probably would have been if they actually told more interesting stories with him previously. But they didn't, and now here we are, with them trying to do the same thing again, except this time peppered in with some moral ambiguity. And this is why I'm so mixed and conflicted with this special. I can see why the writers did the things they did, and I can understand that this could end up being interesting somewhere down the line. And this special definitely did more to make me sympathize with Marinette's plight than I did at the end of Recreation. But on the other hand, this unashamedly doubles down on this controversial story choice. And it triples down on the idea that Adrian isn't important enough to actually be a key player in his own story. The only thing that's keeping me from flat out disliking this story in its entirety is hope that it actually goes somewhere that I'll find interesting. And the only way it could possibly be that for me is if Marinette gets exposed for her lies and gets shunned by Paris. Heck, maybe even Lila doing a bit of psychological torment with her, saying that we're both liars, despite the fact that they lie for very different reasons. And no, I don't want Marinette just to suffer for the sake of it. I'm not that kind of person. I just think that this is the best choice for the character that she's become. It would cause Marinette and Adrian to become more developed as characters, as well as give credence to the fact that Lila is a much bigger threat than Gabriel ever was. Especially if she's the one to cause this exposure to happen. After all, she does have the pictures from Gabriel. She knows that he was Monarch. She knows that Emily was in the basement. And this is all stuff that Marinette has tried to erase from history. And so, having these well-intentioned but extreme actions blow up in her face could lead to a very cool direction for the storyline. But until then, I'm always going to be a little bit skeptical. Not only because of the ethical implications of such a decision outside of the universe that this story resides in, but also because I can't help but feel like this wasn't the best move for the secondary main protagonist of the entire franchise. And all of these problems are bundled up in a nice little bow of yikes. Here's another example. Bug Noir tells Kagami that her mother, Tomoe Tsurugi, was actually working with Monarch willingly, and that she had a direct hand in all of the atrocities committed across season 5. Yeah, at least Kagami gets to know the truth, but then Bug Noir goes on to say that I should bring her to justice, but I don't want to make Kagami suffer. Again, it's that icky plot point that we keep coming back to, these evil people refusing to take accountability for themselves. Absolute monsters getting away with their crimes. And to be fair, Kagami hasn't really shown that much actual on-screen affection for her mother. And unlike Gabriel, we don't really see any instances of Tomoe reciprocating any kind of affection. So letting her get away with her crime scot-free feels extra disturbing. That kind of feels like this special's thing, doesn't it? We're being denied the catharsis that we've wanted for years. And while this storyline does have some good from it, that being Marinette's grief and guilt, which does make me feel bad for Marinette on some level, especially considering the fact that Gabe is basically forcing her hand, the writers can't run from the shady implications of what they've written, and I sincerely hope that things get cleared up in season 6 and beyond. I mean, that's all I can really do at this point, right? As you can probably tell by the way this video was structured, I have a lot of conflicting feelings about Miraculous World London at the Edge of Time. I was incredibly excited for this leading up to its release. I even posted my live reaction to the trailer and everything. There was a lot riding on this special, wasn't there? To fix the mistakes of the season 5 finale and make people think that this really was worthwhile. And in my opinion, it does that. But it also doesn't. You know what I mean? It's conflicting. I haven't been this mixed on a piece of media since the Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, and that's because the London special does a lot that I love and a lot that I don't, and these uncertain feelings can drive you a little bit crazy. After all, I feel like us as human beings like and crave certainty. We want to know where our life is going in the future so that we can be prepared for any unforeseen consequences that may hit us on the way. Almost everything that we fear is deeply rooted in the unknown. We fear things that we don't understand or don't have any control over. Why is such a a common fear, darkness, because we don't know what's around us anymore and what could pounce at us if we're not looking. Why do we fear death? Or the death of a loved one so much? Because we don't know what we would do without them. And yes, those are some extreme comparisons to not knowing what the future storylines are for a cartoon, but I'm just trying to elucidate the fact that no matter how extreme these scenarios are from one another, they all stem from the same roots. It's easy to get bogged down or focus too hard on the negative sides of life, and this can unfortunately cause the good things in your life to ring a bit hollow, and you might be a bit confused as to why things seem to be going the way they are in your life, leading to a potentially paralyzing fear that things will end up going terribly wrong someday. Again, extreme example, I know, but it's the best method that I have to properly convey my thoughts on this special, because this special made me feel a lot of things, good and bad. But you know what? Maybe that's okay. Because at the very least, this isn't a complete abomination that I just hate every second of. I'd rather be conflicted on a piece of media than outright despise it, because I don't want to be consumed by blind hatred that isn't fair. And I want to give this special, and to a certain extent, everyone else and everything else in my life, the credit that I feel it deserves. Because if I don't, then that doesn't really reflect very well on me and my character, does it? And that's why I make these videos. I started this channel almost a year ago because I wanted to talk about the things that I love, no matter how flawed they seem to be. I always try my absolute best to inject nuance into a situation, and I feel like I might have done my job nice and proper with this London review, or at the very least I really hope so. And while I do have a lot of mixed feelings about it, it will never stop me from ever loving the franchise, because it's a part of my life now, and you know what? Maybe that's okay. Thank you all so much for watching this video. I'm honestly really happy that I'm actually becoming a lot more punctual with my uploads as of late. I mean, I'm able to get a video out in about 2 weeks, which is the amount I used to be able to pull out quite a lot. And while I can't promise this in the future, I will definitely try my best. Anyway, this has just been a lengthy preamble for me to say that I'm going to have to delay the Tears of the Kingdom video a little bit. You see, I have a maths test in about 2 weeks that I really need to revise for, and so I have to prioritize my studies over gushing about Zelda just this once. I'm trying to attract some new types of audiences, like Zelda fans. I hope that's alright for all the Miraculous fans in my audience, which is most of you. You don't have to watch it if you don't want to, but I'd really appreciate it if you gave it a try. But I'm not going to force anything on you. My favourite comment from the last video was this one, who actually disagreed with me on a few things about the movie. I always appreciate hearing opinions other than my own, and this was a very fascinating take on it. So thank you, InakiSolar4221, for actually making me think for a second. And if I mispronounced your username, I'm sorry. Anyway, I feel like that will be all. This has been a critical retrospective, and I'll see you all in the next video essay.
What?